The question I'm going to look at today is, how did you become a Christian?
How did you become a Christian?
So I became a Christian when I was a teenager. I was about 17 years old, so that's about 18 years ago now. It makes me feel really old thinking about it. But I wasn't brought up in a Christian home. No one else in my family is a Christian, even now, apart from my nan. But her faith wasn't really a really big important part of her life when I was younger. But when we moved to Exeter when I was 7, I went with some friends to the local Girls Brigade, which is a bit like a church Christian version of Girl Guides. And eventually I left that to go on and try judo instead. But I always believed that there was a God. And one day at school, someone noticed that I was wearing a cross on a necklace. And they said, "Oh, I didn't know you were a Christian." And in that moment, I think I realised that there was something missing. I knew that I wasn't really a Christian. Although I believed in God, I thought there was something missing there, and I would learn that that something missing was a personal relationship with Jesus.
Well, that's actually a bit of a tricky one for me to answer because I can't pinpoint the exact time and date that I became a Christian. For me, it was a very gradual process, and that's because I grew up in a Christian family. Both my parents are followers of Jesus, and my siblings also went to church with me and have both decided that they want to become Christians too. And so I very much grew up in an environment where I knew about Jesus from the get-go. I went to church from as long as I can remember and have been going ever since. And so it would be very easy for me to say, well, I just became a Christian because I was born a Christian. But that's not how being a Christian works. You need to decide for yourself whether that's what you want to do, whether you want to follow Jesus. Your parents can't pass it down to you, even though they can help you learn about him and they can model what following Jesus is like in their lives.
So I began thinking about it more and more. I would read the little Gideon's Bible that you get given. I changed my friendship groups. So I was hanging out with one group of friends from my primary school, and then I found a new group of friends who I had actually a lot more in common with. And it turns out that they went to church. And in fact, it was the same church that I went to Girls Brigade at, which was like 5 minutes away from my house. So the more I started hanging around with them, and the more I started thinking about what it actually meant to be a Christian, I started to go along to church with them, along to the youth group and the Sunday services, and had lots of time to consider how it was that all these Christians sitting around me in the church, what did they have that I didn't? What made them so sure that trusting God was the right thing to do? How did they know that they had got it right? So at the youth group, I really enjoyed studying the Bible, finding lots of answers to all the questions that I had, and just exploring and having fun with everyone. And time went by, and we went on a church youth weekend away. So just the teenagers, just our friendship group. And we went to a little place on Dartmoor. It was really cool, really remote, and just a really, really beautiful place. And while we were there, one of the youth leaders gave a talk which had a real big impression on me. She spoke about how following Jesus means making a decision with your whole heart, a really big life-changing choice that we had to make. And she did this by getting up on the table and saying, life is a little bit like, you're kind of being on this table here. There's not really much you can do, just limited to that table. So you might take one foot off the table. You can reach a little bit further, you can do a few more things, but you're still really limited. You still haven't really committed. Choosing to follow Jesus is like getting off of the table altogether and then finding that the whole world is in front of you. And that really struck with me because I think that's where I was, kind of half on the table, half off. I kind of believed what the Bible said was true, but I hadn't really considered that I would need to then do something about it, because if what the Bible said is true and Jesus really did die for me, I couldn't just live my life ignoring that forever.
But actually that example, my parents' example, is one of the big factors in how I became a Christian, because I knew that they really believed what they said they believed in. And when you're a child, you see your parents up close. You're living together. They can't pretend to be one thing and do another. Their example is what helps us to grow. And I knew that my parents really believed. I'd often walk in on my dad praying, or I'd see them at work loving the people in their communities and serving in the church. And that really helped me to understand that living for Jesus isn't just following certain rules or saying, oh, I'm a Christian, therefore I am. It's about living it out and living the way that Jesus lives, and that he gives us the strength every day to do that. And so I saw that example growing up, but I still wasn't 100% sure. I definitely thought I was a Christian. I followed all the rules as best I could, and I tell all my friends I'm a Christian. But I don't know I truly understood what I meant until I was about 14 or 15. And that's when I started to realise that faith is more than just following rules. It's more than just saying you are something, but it's about putting your trust in someone.
And so after she gave her talk, I went up to her at the end and I said, I think this is something that I need to do. I would love to follow Jesus. I'm ready to make that decision. And it was amazing. She was so encouraging. She was so happy for me. Actually, I wasn't alone. One of my other friends had made that choice that morning as well. And so together there was a small group of us with our other youth leaders, and they sat down with us. They made sure that that's what we really wanted to do. It wasn't just like a spur of the moment thing. They made sure we understood what following Jesus meant, that it wouldn't always be easy, but that we would become part of God's family. We'd have all the support of God and the church behind us, our church family. And I was ready to make that choice then. So they led us through a prayer, which is a bit like a prayer of commitment, where you say sorry to God for the things you've done wrong, and you ask for his help to become his follower and for the gift of the Holy Spirit to help you do that. And they were great. They encouraged me that it would be a great decision to make, but not always an easy one. And I'm really thankful that they were so honest with me about that, because being a Christian can be really, really tough sometimes. But at the same time, I don't regret it. I have never regretted it. It was the best decision I have ever made.
And I started to realise who Jesus was and who he has been all through my life, and how he's looked out for me, how he's helped me to grow. And that's when I started to decide that, yes, I wanted to follow him for myself. I wanted to see what being a Christian was like for me personally. And that journey kind of just continued and grew as I grew, as I learned new things, as I met friends who either had a faith or didn't, and saw what my life was in comparison to those around me. And then I went to university, which is when you leave home and start somewhere new. And that's when I really made like a proper decision to completely follow Jesus, because you have to make your own choices. On a Sunday, no one's checking in on you. You do what you do. And I decided to keep on going to church and to follow the Christian Union, and to keep on working on my relationship with Jesus, and to follow that for myself.
So as a Christian, God has shown me so much in life. I've had some great adventures so far with God, and I'm looking forward to what else God has in store for me. I'm still learning loads, even though I've been a Christian now for just over half of my life. I know that I have still so much more to learn, and I still have questions, I still have doubts sometimes, and sometimes it's really, really hard to choose following Jesus over the things that we might want to do or the things that everyone else is doing. But like I said before, I have never regretted it. This decision to follow Jesus has given me a sense of peace and purpose like nothing else ever has. Even through the toughest of situations, God has always been there for me and has brought me through that.
And so, yeah, it's been a really gradual process for me. I couldn't pinpoint a time or date or a moment, oh, this is when I became a Christian. It's been a very gentle process. And I suppose sometimes I used to be a bit jealous of my friends who'd say, oh, well, I became a Christian on the 4th of December, 1995 or something. But actually, I think I've really been blessed in that there's never been a day when I haven't really known about Jesus, and that I've had the opportunity to see him all the way through my life. And so I've got to grow up knowing what being a follower of Jesus looks like. And now I'm getting to learn, even still day by day, what that feels like in my life.